with regard to the Philistines, that they weren't threatening at all to fight the Philistines. In fact, when the Philistines came and wanted Samson, because of something Samson had done, the Jews were all together of a mind to bring Samson to the Philistines and to hand him over, traitors, really, to the cause of God. If they can get Samson dead, or if they can get Samson at least in prison, they have won a victory, not just over the man, not just have they caused their own nation to be safer, as if he's some threatening criminal, but they have shown themselves victorious over the covenant people of God. And so when that day comes, they are gathered together to praise Dagon their God, and to rejoice, for they said, "Our God hath delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hand. Our God hath delivered into our hands our enemy, and the destroyer of our country, which slew many of us." Give to an idol the glory of deliverance over the covenant people of God, and vengeance is called for. Not personal vengeance, but Jehovah's just vengeance and retribution for evil. Jehovah himself will not allow the wicked to continue in the false, deceived notion that their idol God is more powerful than Jehovah. It isn't that only that they praised their God, but there's also this, that while there, they decide to use Samson to make sport. It came to pass when their hearts were merry that they said, "Call for Samson that he may make us sport." And they called for Samson out of the prison house, and he made them sport, and they set him between the pillars. One needn't be too inventive in one's mind or creative to imagine how a blind man could be used to make sport for people who want nothing else than mere amusement. What kind of tricks today don't people also play on the blind in an ungodly form of humor and jest? Yet this blind man was the judge Jehovah had put in office, the one through whom Jehovah himself was saying to the Philistines, "I hate you, and it is your calling to repent of your idolatry and your sin, and to ally yourselves with my people Israel." But this judge is the means by which the wicked make sport. It happens today too, that if an office bearer of the covenant is not blind or in some other way physically deformed, it happens that the wicked around, maybe you know that from here, look at the office bearer of a congregation or a group of believers, and they heap all their scorn on him, all their hatred for the true Jehovah God, as he makes himself known in the Scriptures, all their hatred for the truth of the Scriptures, for which a fellowship or a church stands, is heaped on a man because he did something or he said something that the people, the society, the false religions think to be wrong. And so they pour out their scorn, and Jehovah in heaven says of them, "But that one represents my name and my covenant. How you treat him is what you think of me. And Jehovah in heaven will avenge." This is not just personal vengeance. This is an office bearer avenging, and through him Jehovah avenging the wicked. It's because Samson avenges as an office bearer of the covenant of God, and a godly office bearer at that, that he serves as a picture of Jesus Christ. The office of judge already points us to Jesus Christ, who is the great judge of heaven and earth. In the last days, Jesus Christ will return, and he will call all men, women, and children before him who ever have lived, and pronounce judgment upon us for what we have done, whether good or evil. That vengeance, that judgment, will include his condemning to everlasting destruction the wicked, who have praised their idol gods for all their supposed victories, who have always treated the church of God as a plaything. And in that day, Jehovah will avenge through Jesus Christ. But consider that when Jesus Christ comes again to judge, he will judge not only for what wicked men have done to others, but for what happened to him personally. Christ suffered many wrongs at the hands of wicked men. The leaders of the Jews blasphemed him and accused him of wickedness of which he was not guilty. Pilate, the representative of the Roman world government, pronounced him to be worthy of death, or at least pronounced him and sentenced him to death, though he was innocent. That was a wrong, a gross injustice done to Jesus Christ. The holes put in his hands and in his feet, the death by which he died, was a sign that people hated Jesus Christ. And for what did they hate him? What wrong had he ever done? Nothing than that he claimed to represent Jehovah God. In the day in which Jesus Christ returns from judgment, he will avenge his church of all the wrongs we've suffered then, but also the wrongs he suffered personally as he worked on behalf of God. He says as much to the high priest that tried him. I read from Matthew 26, verse 64. When the high priest said, I adjure thee by the living God, that thou tell us whether thou be the Christ, the Son of God. And Jesus answered him, Thou hast said, Yes, I am. Nevertheless, I say unto you, hereafter shall ye see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. As if to say, do you judge me now? Do you judge me as guilty of blasphemy? But remember, high priest, I will one day judge you. That vengeance will also include the wrongs that the Church of Jesus Christ has suffered. As you and I, throughout our life, experience oppression and scorn and ridicule at the hands of wicked men, Jesus says, turn the other cheek. And he says, turn the other cheek because he means to remind us that as regards our person, we're to bear these wrongs meekly. Vengeance is not ours. It is not our right to punish another for how they've treated us, but vengeance is God's. But this vengeance which Samson works on and accomplishes upon the wicked does say something. Not to me as an individual or you as individuals, but to the Church of Jesus Christ as a body regarding the spiritual power that is ours over against the wicked. Whether those be wicked inside the church, and there are at times wicked, ungodly unbelievers within the Church of Jesus Christ on earth, or whether they be wicked outside the church, the persecutors and tormentors of the church does have a weapon. That weapon, one which the office bearers himself must use to pronounce not our own judgment, but the judgment of Jehovah on his enemies. That weapon is and always will be the preaching of the gospel of grace. The gospel is preached, of course, to the upbuilding and the edification of the people of God. That same gospel speaks already of judgment to those who hate the gospel and the church of Jesus Christ. Use that form of vengeance, brothers and sisters of the fellowship here. Be not like Peter, who took out his earthly sword, who intended to make right what he saw to be wrong, to do it himself, and to do it within the space of a few moments with an earthly weapon, but use the spiritual weapons God has given you to tell others of the coming of Jesus Christ to judge and avenge. In the process of avenging, Samson died. Before his prayer for strength, which we've noticed in verse 28, he asked the lad who guided him to bring him to the pillars on which that temple was erected. It was his intent to pull those pillars down, and in pulling them down, to collapse the whole house and to kill the men and the women there. It was inevitable that if Samson succeeded and pulled down those pillars and caused the house to collapse and many to die, that he himself would die too. He recognized that when he said, "Let me die with the Philistines." And indeed, verse 30 tells us that is what happened. He bowed himself with all his might. The house fell upon the lords and upon all the people that were therein. So the dead which he slew at his death were more than they which he slew in his life. Samson, in dying, gave himself, sacrificed himself unto death for the cause of God. What Samson did not do in dying is commit suicide. That is, of course, the way it's presented by so many. That would make this also an act of rebellion against Jehovah God. For suicide, intentionally being the cause of one's own death, is a form of sin against the sixth commandment of God's law, "Thou shalt not kill." It proceeds inevitably, especially when one is mentally stable, from a heart that says, "I am not content with the circumstances of my life. God, in His providence, has not done to me what I wanted. Therefore, I will refuse to live unto God. I will refuse to serve Him in this life. I will kill myself and see then what He can do to me." But when Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines," he rather indicated that he would sacrifice himself in war. Do not forget that there are times, also in an earthly war, when a soldier might recognize that to fight against or to get involved in a certain skirmish or conflict will certainly mean his own death. But then he doesn't turn from that and say, "So I'm not going to fight against the enemy." He goes courageously to the battle and realizes that there are times when, in dying, a man obtains victory in a war. That was Samson here. His primary goal was not his own death. His primary goal was the death of the enemies of God. But he would die inevitably in the process. The only alternative, if he's going to avoid death, is that the Philistines also will not